welcome to the Pod People, America's premier horror podcast. I'm Matisse Van Rossum, and I've got a bad case of the vocal fry.
I'm Japanese expert Ben Sheets.
I'm, getting back from Christmas break and putting on some weight. I'm being haunted by a thing called the girth. They call me Cleveland Mosier.
Cleveland the Girth Mosier.
Sure.
That is what we've always known you as ever since you were a wee lad.
I wish, honestly.
Well, as much as we wish we could stay back in 2019 with such classic films as The Lighthouse and Daniel Isn't Real, we have to accept the reality that 2020 is officially here.
It is real.
And how do you start a new year? With fuck you, it's January, of course.
How better?
Fuck you!
Fuck you!
Well, we're not ringing in the new year. We're grudging in the new year. Because you're The Ring. It's a similar movie.
I get it.
Just making sure.
We got it.
Good.
Yeah, today we're talking about our first film of 2020, which is the new Grudge, written and directed by Nicolas Pesce, almost Joe Pesci, but not quite.
I kind of wish that they'd got the route of, like, the soft reboot retitling where the movie was just called Grudge.
Oh, where they dropped the
yeah.
Oh, man, dude, you're right. That's what they should have done.
Yeah.
This movie stars some people, some familiar, some unfamiliar. And it's about a ghost in a house. Ghosts in a house.
Andrea Riseborough is in it. She was obviously Mandy of Mandy. John Cho is in it.
Small part by Frankie Faison. Always nice to see him.
Oh, yeah. National treasure right there.
True. Yeah, well, Ben, as our resident Japanese expert, self-proclaimed, why don't you tell us a little bit about The Grudge?
So originally it started out as one of the 90s J-horror staples, you know?
Yes.
Alongside The Ring and The Eye and One Missed Call.
And Pulse?
Which turned into a trend of American remakes in the early 2000s. Most notably, The Grudge in 2004. I think it starred Sarah Michelle Gellar.
That sounds right, yeah.
But yeah, this new one, the whole premise of The Grudge is if someone is killed in a fit of rage, it curses the area the death happened at, essentially.
And I guess it can travel too, because why not?
Well, the idea is it lasts with you forever. You can't escape it. So once you're in that house, you're haunted forever.
Right.
It's stuck to you. There is no escape. Much like this movie.
Yeah,
there is no escape.
There was no escape from this movie. As we mentioned briefly last week, none of us have seen any of the other Grudge films. Not Ju-on, the original Japanese one, nor the 2004 remake, which was directed by the same guy who did the Japanese version. He did do the American remake.
I think he directed the sequels as well.
The second one, not the third one.
I didn't know there was a third one. I'm not surprised.
There's a bunch of them.
We're all bad on this blessed day. None of us did the homework. For once, it's not just me coming to the podcast with less film buffery at hand.
We didn't want to do a second episode cramming 3 movies in, and maybe we want to talk about those other ones in the future on the podcast, so we didn't want to, watch them beforehand just for our own information. So we all went into this one completely fresh. I mean, outside of the obvious, I think, Grudge references that have seeped into the pop horror culture.
Well, I think that's a good thing, honestly. I think it's more interesting that we're all going from the same perspective.
Right. So you're not going to get a nostalgic take. So I think there's still plenty beneficial we can bring to the table.
Well, I was definitely nervous.
I definitely want to see it.
I was nervous going into this one because I had seen that it had gotten really bad reviews. And I think when we were driving back up the other day, Cleve, you mentioned you saw that it was like the 20th film to receive an F rating on Cinema Scores.
Which is not always a bad thing. I will say Cinema Score is way different, in my opinion, than whether a film is good or not. Like, there's certainly been some fucking duds with F ratings, but there's been some highly rated movies that are bad, or movies with bad cinema scores that are actually good.
Sure, I use that more as like a marker that this movie was gonna make me feel strongly about it one way or the other. Like, if it's going to be given an F on Cinema Scores, like, that's a pretty vitriolic reaction. So
that actually surprises me that it got an F.
Well, especially in hindsight, me too. Because I think that this movie was pretty okay for what it was.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty solid.
I didn't hate it. I didn't really love it either.
With some trepidations, I think it's a very okay movie.
Yeah, what it does well, what I liked about it, I liked a lot. Like, I thought was quite fun. What I didn't like was fairly inoffensive and didn't, like, piss me off or anything terrible.
No, nothing.
There's nothing, like really showing.
Nothing ever, like, really irritated me. And at times I wished that it had almost, because especially in the second half, I found myself getting really bored.
You just wanted to feel something.
And I was almost longing for it to get really stupid.
So you had something to loathe at least.
Right,
yeah.
or at least laugh at. But instead, it just, like, even up to the end, I was just kind of like, okay, I guess. Everything that happened. What I will say is I think that what it lacks in originality, it makes up for in style.
Yes, I think...
Full-hearted.
The aesthetic of this movie is really strong. I saw Sam Raimi's name was on the production of this, which is really interesting because it almost seems like a trend in the movies he's produced in the last decade between Evil Dead and Don't Breathe and this one, where it's all about getting those really grimy, dilapidated aesthetics in terms of production design, and that carried over in this movie, but I think to its benefit.
Yeah, I agree. I think, quick sidebar on Sam Raimi producing this, an interesting trend about the films he produces as well are a lot of them are young filmmakers with only one or two other movies under their belt when he picks up their stuff. So it's nice to see that he is, like, paying attention to smaller indie filmmakers and giving them an opportunity to shine. I think that's certainly the case with Fede Alvarez and
Absolutely.
Don't Breathe. And Nicolas Pesce, or however you pronounce his name, like, The Eyes of My Mother, the film he did before this, is like a highly atmospheric, super creepy indie art house horror movie. And I feel like somebody saw that movie and was like, oh yeah, let's put this guy onto our Grudge reboot. I went through the whole movie thinking that, like, there's no way he wrote it, because I think he's a better writer than this movie, but he sure does have the main writing credit on this movie.
I'm so at odds with the script because a lot of the expository dialogue I just thought was bad.
Yeah.
I think as a whole, the concept of the Grudge is interesting and kind of unique.
Yeah, totally.
Especially how it grasps on to people specifically that enter the house. I found that stuff really interesting, and I think he did a somewhat good job of not dumbing it down too much. I thought there was a bit much expository dialogue at times. The biggest thing I had with it is I feel like a lot of the script seemed worse because of the editing choices.
I wasn't a big fan of the non-linearity of it either. It felt unnecessarily convoluted for a movie like this.
Yeah, or at least like an attempt to make it feel deeper than it might actually be.
Like the multiple storylines that took place at different times, like over the course of 3 years, and then cutting back and forth between them.
I would have been a lot more okay with it if the transitions weren't so jarring between them. Like the big, like 2004, like filling the screen and like location, like over the top of it was.
If they were a little bit more,
a little jarring,
a little bit more cleanly interconnected too.
I'd be willing to bet in the original script that the storyline with the husband and wife was just intercut, and you didn't realize it was during a different timeline, and that was played up as like a surprise.
Well, yeah, I mean,
like,
this movie
I bet in the original cut,
was,
and then it just didn't translate in editing or
this
something.
movie
and it
was
a
in
salvage.
development hell for a while.
Yeah,
you know,
something like that.
And so I'm sure a lot of that came out of just
Scream studio interference to me.
Being mulled over a little too much.
Yeah, but that would be my guess. Like just after watching the film, what I'll say is I think that a lot of the dialogue was saved by acting, and decent delivery. If lesser actors had that same dialogue to work with, it could have been rough. Like some of the scenes could have been way worse than they were.
Yeah, I think the only legitimately bad actor was the little boy, and thankfully he didn't have very many lines.
Yeah. Like, and I know that one at the end, like the twist is it's not the boy,
it's the ghost.
Yeah,
but
like
still,
it doesn't make the ghost scary. I tell you what.
No,
like
no, he was totally flat.
Comically in that last bit. Like, it was... Anyone could get a better cut,
Mom,
get a better take out of that kid.
I'm scared.
Right, what the fuck was that? No fear in the voice.
You don't sound scared at all.
Like, you could fix that in post. Like, just like, do audio over the top of it. Like what? There's no excuse. I don't understand.
I agree with you, though, that I think the acting is pretty solid otherwise.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree 100%.
Like, wonderful at times. Like,
I think it elevates it at times. I think, for example, the detective that was originally on the case that went insane was a super well done character, you know, like going to the insane asylum and seeing him, you know, strapped down, just his face like utterly mutilated.
That whole scene had like such heavy Silence of the Lambs shades for me.
Well, I mean, her walking down the hallway and seeing the other inmates,
and then when she's leaving, they're all banging on the walls.
I was waiting to see Arthur Fleck,
and his face is fucked up like Gary Oldman's character in Hannibal. I don't know. Maybe I was just thinking about it because I saw Frankie Faison.
No, like it's almost like borderline not an homage at that point. I think it was trying a little too hard.
I think that was one of the more fun set pieces though, where I'm like, okay, yeah, I can get on board with this. I want to talk a little bit about one of my bigger problems conceptually with the whole thing, broad strokes.
Sure.
I think that the Americanization of this premise does not work.
It's nowhere near as scary.
Because I haven't seen the 2004 American remake, but I know it still takes place in Japan. It's the character is living in Japan. The Grudge and the whole idea of that curse, and it's so like inherently Japanese and like based on like Japanese folklore and stuff like that, and that's what makes it unique and creepy. And I think they did a really bad job of translating that in this movie. I think the ghosts were really boring.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things to me is I feel like they didn't separate it enough because a lot of the stuff they did that was original and not so clung to the idea of spooky long-haired ghost lady was good. It was interesting. Like the people going insane. Yeah. That stuff was really dark and... It was
pretty well handled.
Yeah, really interesting, gritty stuff. It's where we see long-haired ghost lady all the time.
And the husband ghost, I thought, looked really bad.
At least not scary.
And the little girl ghost, too, also. I didn't think
generic.
I thought they were all super generic. They looked like a dozen spooky ghosts from a dozen bad straight-to-Netflix horror movies that you'd see nowadays. And there's nothing about them visually that stands out, I think. And I think that the original Grudge did that really well.
I think it does it better than most. It's hard to speak for it, having not seen it, but what familiarity I do have with The Grudge...
I've seen scenes from
exactly
The Grudge,
is more horrifying than anything I saw in this film.
Agreed.
And to be fair, like there's also the element of like me being in 7th grade watching Conan late at night and them doing a clip from The Grudge, and it scaring the living hell out of me when I was but a wee lad. And like, I still have that scene pretty like burned into my head. And I didn't even watch half of it. Like, I remember like closing my eyes and just still hearing the sound, and like it really like freaking me out. And it can be hard to compete with like that childlike imagination of something scary. But still, I think that the jump scares with like just another like corpse head face, that we've seen 1,000 times before is kind of a detriment.
Here's the thing about this movie. I feel like it could just as easily not be The Grudge and worked just as quote-unquote well as it did.
This is a haunted house.
I don't think there's anything about it that screamed Grudge to me, except for the sound, the ghost sound.
Well, I mean, also just like the term grudge, like when I think back over this movie, I never have like a deep sense of like an unbridled like hatred and rage and anger at someone.
A sense of unfinished business.
Yeah, you don't get that feeling. It's just being haunted by spookies. The title's important. Like, achieve the theme.
Well, it's interesting because similar to you guys, I haven't seen either one of the Grudges. So my point of reference for this movie that I kept going back to was the Ring remake.
Oh, yeah,
the Gore Verbinski Ring movie. Did you see The Ring, the early 2000s one?
I didn't, but it rings a bell.
Go on, Ben.
Well, that movie is quite good, in my opinion. I
think it's decent,
and it's very similar in how it kind of slowly builds its sense of dread and atmosphere. The thing that movie does where this movie kind of fails is it has a sense of restraint. It knows not to just barrage you with nonsensical jump scares that don't really have much build to them. And I think it's the better for it. I think, honestly, if you cut all of the cheap jump scares out of this movie, it would be all the better for it. And
I think
it would be just as coherent, honestly.
Well, that's the thing.
I think that was also maybe an executive
probably
decision.
Yeah,
because like they didn't have any semblance to the scenes most of the time.
Well, because the thing is, like, to make a comparison to The Eyes of My Mother, like, that movie doesn't have any jump scares as far as I know. Yeah. It's all atmosphere, and I think that the atmospheric stuff in this movie was the best. I would even say that I was liking the movie, for the first 30 to 45 minutes. I thought the build-up was really good. It was creepy. There was a lot of, like, really dark, spooky moments. And then, like, the action kicked off, and it just alternated between exposition and a scene of somebody walking around a room in complete silence for about a minute, and then jump scare, and then exposition, and then somebody walking around a quiet room for a minute, and then jump scare, repeat until the end of the movie.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating because there's so many. I think there's a lot of really effective sequences in this movie where they're legitimately scary. For example, the first time we see Mrs. Matheson, I think it is, when Andrea Riseborough goes into the house for the first time. She goes in and sees Mrs. Matheson, like, cackling, laughing, and we only see her back at the counter, like, cutting something. Mm-hmm. It's a really disturbing scene. The aesthetic is so grimy in that house at that point. She turns around, she has blood on her. You don't know what it's from, really. She's just off in her delivery and performance. She does a great job in this.
Yeah, she's one of the standouts. It's nice to see her actually giving a decent performance. What is that actress's name? She's fucking we called her Droopy Dog when we were talking about Insidious.
Lin Shaye,
yes. I will still refer to her as Droopy Dog, though. I think she's much better in this movie than in Insidious: The Last Key. I thought she was one of the creepier parts. That scene is maybe the spookiest scene in the movie, I think. Her delivery is really good, and, like, the reveal that she's been, like, cutting off her fingers and stuff, gross.
Yeah. This is, like, foreshadowed earlier, because we see her hand as a spooky ghost, and her fingers are missing. I think when it comes to the acting, like, I really liked, like, Frankie Faison's monologue. largely because the dialogue wasn't very good, and he turned it around. That's one of my exemplary moments for that, when he does the whole, like, what a grudge is and how he thinks that maybe there's hope for his house. I thought it was fun. And I wish, honestly, there had been a little bit more of that, like him trying to make a good thing out of this haunted horror situation.
Yeah, I would have liked to see him be a little bit more manic, I think, because it's like...
It's a good idea.
It is a good idea, and like the stuff that we've seen up till this point is like there's no way you can see any of that and think like, oh yeah, this is positive, you know, and be sane. Yeah. So I wish
you almost get like scared for him, because like it's kind of a hippy dippy like philosophy to have, and like you could believe someone like feeling that way about the situation.
There's a desperation to it.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know, like he wants to be with his wife, you know, cognizant so badly, that he's willing to look beyond the horrors in front of him.
Right, and his character was like pretty compelling, and he gets killed like off screen in the next scene, and it's like, like I don't know, there's just some wasted potential there, I think.
Yeah, nothing ever comes of that interesting moment. Yeah, you know,
and that could have been cool.
He's just dead after that.
There's a good idea in that.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about the props and effects?
Okay,
because one thing I wanted to give the movie like big points for is the desiccated corpse in the car. It looked awesome. Like, it really did.
Yeah.
A great way to lead in, because like we've all seen like the detectives coming up on a corpse before, but like the way it was like grown over and rotted, like it looked great. Like it was really well made.
Their effects house was really good. I mean,
they showed up
later in the house with Mrs. Matheson. We get that shot where it turns to the TV and the body is sitting.
Body,
sitting
in the maggots.
And there's like maggots in his face.
Yeah, look great.
Yeah, they have a great sense of detail. The effects artists in this movie.
I was glad to see as many practical effects as we did for the horror stuff, and I was pleasantly surprised by how gory the movie was.
It was really gruesome.
Some of the deaths did not necessarily feel deserved, I guess.
Little in this movie felt earned.
Yeah, that's what I mean, basically. But I think that effects-wise, a lot of it was really good. Like at the very end when Mrs. Mathis is in the insane asylum and she jumps down the staircase to her death. That's another...
Oh, the splat!
Yeah.
Man, how about that splat?
She hits the banister first and like it snaps her neck, and you can just see her head like ragdolling as she, and then hits the ground and...
Yeah, it's like a killer like blood burst.
I thought that was really good.
One of the best like fall deaths I've just about ever seen effects wise. Like it was wretched.
In a way, like that's one thing I appreciate in this movie is they really didn't skimp out on how gruesome it is. You know, in
no
a movie
punches were
of
pulled
this kind, it would be easy for them to make this PG-13.
Well, yeah, I think like The Ring and the 2004 Grudge. I think all of those movies are PG-13. I went into this one assuming it was PG-13, so I was pleasantly surprised by the R rating. And I mean, in a movie like this where, like, especially in the second half, I'm just getting so fucking bored, like, it's nice to still have my attention, like, perked up a little bit by, like, some good effects and gore. Let me ask y'all a question. Do y'all think that they could have just cut John Cho's and his wife's whole storyline and the movie would have been fine without it?
No, only because I really liked the lighting in the murder scene. I thought it looked really good, and it was very anime, the way his glasses like shone in the dark. I thought that was super fun.
Aesthetic aside,
it's like my favorite shot in the movie.
Aesthetic aside, the aesthetic is solid throughout the movie. I agree with that.
He looked like Hacker Man. It was great.
I'm talking about from a narrative perspective to try to make the movie a little bit less convoluted,
to make it a little leaner,
a little bit leaner, a little bit more concise.
They didn't really tie it in.
Their story has no impact on the rest of the film.
I think you could have fixed it in editing. I think if you'd reshuffled it a little bit and like given it more semblance for as much screen time as it took, that's part of the issue. Is like it did, like you were saying, like why you'd want to cut it is as it took up a pretty big deal of screen time. Yeah. We see them with the kid, and the doctor, and all that. It doesn't
really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't really.
No, it's just another like
the overarching story.
And it's just another Grudge.
Their bodies, yeah.
They're just another contributing factor to the spooky ghost. But if they'd had semblance, if like her detectiving, you know, like had started to come across them and we didn't realize that they were in a different timeline, and her trying to reach out and contact them before it's too late. There could have been something there.
That would have been more interesting,
like,
I think.
There could have been intrigue that tied in with our core storyline better than just they were also part of the house.
But as it stands, they didn't do any of that, and I think that because of that, you could remove it and the movie would just be a little bit
you absolutely
shorter.
could.
On the flip
You
side,
wouldn't lose much.
outside of aesthetics, what did you think of the set piece where he went to the house and met the little girl and she started bleeding?
Oh,
a little campy.
A little bit campy. I liked it when he took her inside and he's leaving a message with her dad. Is like, "Hey, I just found your daughter." And he's like, "Yeah, she had a little bit of a bloody nose, but she's okay now." And it just cuts to her and just like spewing blood out of her mouth. That did make me laugh a little bit.
Yeah, well, because it's like, who's the ghost doing that for other than the audience?
Well, I mean, also the ghost, and then after that, the ghost like fell asleep on the couch for several hours. Yep. I thought that was an interesting choice.
I guess ghosts have to nap too, I guess.
Yeah, well, he's just sitting there. Like, if you were alone with him in the house for hours, did you have to wait until it was nighttime to do the spookies? We've seen the ghosts do spookies in the daytime before that, so...
There were no rules.
No rules whatsoever.
I didn't really get why she felt like burning the house down would save her. Because, like, she'd seen the ghost outside of the house, like, loads of times.
Yeah, in her own house multiple times. Well, just because she went to the crazy detective in the asylum and he said we should have just burned the house down, and she latched onto that for some reason. I don't know why she was surprised.
Right?
Like, the whole point of the Grudge is...
Sure, it's the source, but, like, clearly it can leave.
But you're right, but it's not the source. She like, in her own research, she discovered that the lady brought it back with her from Japan.
Yep.
So we know that house is not the source. Why did she think burning the house down would...
That was her character who found that piece of information.
Yeah, she found that.
That's rough. Oh,
I guess we should also say that this is more of a soft reboot of The Grudge, because I think I guess it just is straight up a sequel to the 2004 version.
Well, it looks like the
actors
from the beginning are the highest build. Junko Bailey is the Kayako ghost.
Well, yeah, that's the ghost.
It's the ghost at the very beginning, but is she throughout the rest of the film?
I'm pretty sure she's the ghost throughout the whole thing. But
are you looking at IMDb? Sometimes they do it in order of appearance, which would make sense if Fiona Landers is the top build, because we have that weird scene, the first scene in the movie where she's looking at the trash
outside the house from the original Grudge.
Yeah.
And the ghost is in the trash, and then it latches onto her there and comes back to America. And that's another reason why I think that you really don't have an excuse for, like, how lazily they Americanized the thing. Because in the film, the ghost even comes from Japan, so it's still like a Japanese ghost. You could still do all of, like, the cool Japanese folklore stuff.
Yep. Or just do anything else. Like, I think if they'd had more stuff like that looked like the desiccated corpses as the jump scares, at least it would have been kind of creative and fun. But just getting the same, like, lazy, like, spooky man with a little bit of, you know, like, the case of, like, steak face.
Not nearly as scary.
No, at all. Like,
steak face man and hair lady and girl. Those are the ghosts. Yeah, I didn't find any of the ghosts particularly scary.
At least they were well lit. The lighting was front to back.
The lighting was
great.
The cinematography was great all around.
It's good to look at.
That reminded me a lot of the sort of cinematic sensibilities of The Eyes of My Mother. I loved the color palette in this movie.
Everything
was like
beigey, brown, orange,
like super heavy, like tungsten lighting.
Yeah,
it was.
It felt like a cyber noir at times.
Yeah,
like
I was gonna say at times it felt film noir. Also, what did you guys think of, like, the kind of soft focus vignette that was over the entire movie? I kind of liked it.
I didn't hate it.
I liked it, yeah.
I thought it was a little blown out in the shower scene. Even then, if you're gonna go like with a bunch of jump scares, like at least like have some style and character. Like while we can fault it for a lot of the ghosts being kind of generic, at least it did bring something else to the table. You know, it's the weird aunt who comes for Thanksgiving who doesn't have anything good to talk about, but she did bring like some really like tasty stuffing or something. You know, like the movie contributed in some way to the feast metaphor that is quickly falling apart. Anyway.
No, I get where you're coming from. I did not hate the vignette. I thought it was okay. The actual like darkening of the corners I question a little bit, but it wasn't distracting. I think that overall the film was good to look at.
It wasn't too obnoxious.
No, it was comic booky. Not class. It wasn't like classy, but it was fun.
Did I miss what the significance of the number 4 in this movie was? Because they kept popping up all over the place.
I guess it's technically the Grudge 4.
It's not, though.
I think it has something to do with the lore, but I don't know.
Maybe that's something from the other ones that we would get, because like the haunted house is number 44. The detective's house is number 14. There's the part where she calls the other detective at 4:44 in the morning.
Oh, actually, it looks like the house's number in the film is 44, a reference to the original Ju-on short film 444, 444, 444, 444, 444, 4.
It's a lot of 4s.
It says 4 is also a number of bad luck in Japanese culture, due to the number in Japanese being specifically a homophone for the character she, which means death.
Okay,
so 4 means death.
I mean, cool. I guess that's a nice little Easter egg for those who know it. That's probably more apparent in the original Grudge films. But I'm glad that there is a reason for it, because I did notice the proclivity of the number 4, and I was like, why is that? Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say about this movie.
Demian Bashir, who played Goodman, at first I thought his character was going to be kind of obnoxious because it comes across as just like kind of a flat character, Captain Catholic, but like he actually was kind of intriguing and fun. Like I wish we'd seen a little bit more with him.
He kind of got put on the shelf 20 minutes into the movie. He didn't really show up again until the end, and then he still didn't do anything.
And like the whole bit with like the pie and like his mother and shit, like I thought that scene was kind of fun.
I thought they were trying to set him up for like a tragic death or something, because like he was chain smoking, and like when they're driving in the car, like he has the cough. I was expecting it to be like him discovering that he has lung cancer or something, so he valiantly sacrifices himself at the end because he knows he's gonna die anyway.
Nothing.
Nope.
We don't find out how he even feels about the situation afterwards.
Nope.
Like the conclusion is really like it feels kind of rushed.
Yep.
Like I have to wonder like what the original cut of this movie or the original script looked like. Like I'm pretty curious about that, because there are some clear decisions.
The last thing that I'll mention that I thought was a strange and ultimately disappointing decision was the credits.
Oh, weird! Yeah,
how they
silent.
Yeah, well, they at the very end, you know, she's getting her son ready for school. She thinks she's defeated the curse, and then she gives her son a hug, and we see her son in the background with his backpack saying, "I'm going to school, da da da, it's the ghost." It attacks her, she screams, it cuts to the outside of the house, and it just holds on a still shot of the house in complete silence and as the credits roll.
Y'all were ready to walk out, but I wanted just to see, you know, if like we were going to get like a Marvel-esque something at the end, and I was just sort of hoping that maybe like somewhere like in the periphery or like in the window, like slowly a ghost would appear or something.
I was waiting for her body to fly through the window onto the front lawn or something.
Yes, honestly.
Like, but then nothing.
Yeah, and I mean it's certainly a bold way to end your movie, but it didn't feel like this movie deserved it.
No, and it didn't feel like
it didn't earn that ending.
It didn't feel like that final shot with the credits over it was saying anything. Yeah,
it was saying you watched the Grudge
house
movie.
is now haunted. Ooh.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. I mean, if this curse is
That
as
smaller, less interesting looking house.
if this
All right,
curse
cool.
is as prolific and can travel as far as it does, how is it not every house in America or in the world cursed? Now that's an interesting sequel for The Grudge. If it spreads so much that it's a you live in a post-apocalypse where the entire planet is cursed, except for a few people trying to survive.
A sequel where they turn the haunted house into an Airbnb.
Oh, yeah, that would
my
be
God.
good.
That's an SNL skit.
All right, well, I'm ready to rate this if you guys are.
Yeah.
Well, once again, first film of the year, fails to really do a whole lot. But I think we're all less disappointed in this one than we were with last year's first film of the year, which was Glass. It was better than I was expecting. I went into it expecting some dog shit. It was okay. For a ghost movie, it was fine. Got really generic and boring at the end, but the atmosphere was nice. It was spooky. The acting was good. I'm going to go dead center of the road, 2.5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I thought the aesthetic of this movie was really solid. I like the color palette. And I think they do some interesting things with the approach to this movie as a whole. They make some really interesting moves that you wouldn't normally see. And I think the acting is pretty solid, and it elevates some of the material at times. But it does fall into a lot of the trappings of the genre, unfortunately. And it really doesn't build its jump scares in a great way. I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. It's not an upsetting movie. I don't think it deserves the thrashing that it's probably been
No, I don't think
getting.
so either, frankly.
I don't think it's that bad.
No. Like I said at the top, what I really liked. Like, I thought there was some fun stuff. Oh, another thing I thought was fun was the score. I really liked even though like it felt unearned, the haunted house sequence at the end when she's like spreading the gasoline around. There's that kind of like Saw theme-esque kind of like music that was playing. I thought that was a fun track.
Yeah, there was a sample in that sounded like
Like they just sampled The Grudge. I thought it was fun.
To me it sounded like a cat, like an upset cat. Like there's just that.
I liked it. See, that's fun. I like that personally.
Okay.
I think it's kind of weird. It's a little, they're doing something else.
Anyway.
Fuck it. I'm gonna give it a friendly 3. When it dropped the ball, I wasn't like offended by it. Like it didn't bother me. A forgivable 3. The good stuff was fun.
Well, that will give the 2020 remake of The Grudge and a soft 2.7 out of 5 pods.
Well, we did predict this movie.
Yes, we did.
We do have results.
Ooh, look out.
So, for those who maybe did not listen to our episode 2 weeks ago, we did do new predictions for 22 movies? 20 movies for this year. The Grudge is the first. We did our normal Rotten Tomatoes and box office predictions, but we also did a preliminary rating, what we thought that we would rate it. So that we'll do that for bonus points.
Yes. So first off, Rotten Tomatoes score. Tease, you had this getting a 68 on Rotten Tomatoes. Cleve, you had 40, and I had 62. It is a 17.
Oh, you got it, Tease.
It went up.
No, you got it.
Oh, I got it.
I
I said
guess 68.
Oh, you said 68?
Yeah,
I guess
Oh, so I was the
60.
lowest. I was the low baller.
Yeah.
Fuck yes. Awesome.
Yeah, I guess 62.
Starting the year right,
and
boys.
Not even
17.
close.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think it's that
It's
bad.
not that
I don't
bad.
think it's that bad.
It's about a 40.
Yeah.
It's whatever.
I mean, I would say it's about between a 40 and a 50.
Yeah.
But
It's fine.
all right, well, moving on.
Okay, and then for opening weekend box office, let's see. Tease, you said 18 million.
I did.
You said 10 million, Cleve. and I said 25 million.
Oh shit! Come on, bring it to
I think
me.
you might have this one again.
Turns out 11.4 million. Cleveland got this one as
so
well.
close.
2 for 2.
Yes.
All right.
I'm learning.
Finally, we have predictions for scores. Tease, you predicted 3.5. Cleve, you predicted 2.5.
Oh.
And I predicted 3.5.
So that's Cleveland again. 3 for 3.
Yes.
I was a full star rating off
20.
from what I thought I was gonna predict.
2020 is looking good for old Cleve.
Yeah, off to a strong start.
All right.
Yes, so.
All right.
Well, next week we will be moving right along into
We'll be taking a deep dive.
deep dive, so to speak, into the next 2020 horror film, Underwater. Seen a couple of previews for this. It looks like Alien at the bottom of the ocean.
Could be really cool, but
I'm a little skeptical about some things.
Aesthetically, it looks awesome.
Aesthetically, it looks cool. I'm tentatively looking forward to this one. I think it could let me down, but premise-wise, it looks pretty cool.
I'm hopeful.
Well, since we finished up kind of early this time, I will ask you guys, we did in the theater see a trailer for A Quiet Place Part 2, which when we recorded our predictions, there was not a trailer yet, and I think you called it correctly, Ben, that we would get one by the end of the year, and we sure did.
Yep.
I know you haven't seen the first Quiet Place, Cleve, so we won't go into spoilers on that. Because I know you'll want to watch it.
Well, in
before.
a way, the trailer kind of
Spoiled.
spoiled.
I mean, yeah.
Like, like, how about that? Because, like, yeah, I didn't know that the spookies look like xenomorph roaches.
I'm honestly a little bit less optimistic based off of the new trailer, because it looks like they just turned A Quiet Place into The Walking Dead. The family's on the run and they encounter other people, and what a surprise, in the apocalypse the people who survived are bad.
It's cool to see Dijman Hansu in it.
Here's
I haven't
the thing,
seen
though.
him in a movie in a long time.
It could be like an Alien to Aliens situation. That's the vibe I got off of it. Because I remember hearing, and like from what little I saw of A Quiet Place, it seemed like very subtle, very came to say what it needed to say.
They don't
and
show
this
the
one,
monsters until the very
like
end.
in the trailer, like you see him crawling all over the place. And
It's a little bit more action heavy.
For
That could
A
be an Alien
Quiet Place
situation.
2, this seems a lot louder.
Yes.
In more ways than one.
Not sure how that's going to be. The new male lead is Cillian Murphy. I always like to see him in things.
Yeah, he's very good at silliest roles.
Stop.
Cillian Murphy.
Nope. Yeah, overall, I'm a little bit less interested than what I was hoping for, but it could still be good. Same cast, same crew, same, people working on it, so we will see when it comes to that.
Well, I have some movie trivia if we want to kill a little bit more time.
Okay.
I got a special set here. This will be fun. So we'll just go around. The answers are on the back, so I can answer these questions just as much. So I'll start with you, Cleve.
Uh-oh.
This is a movie we watched for the podcast.
Oh no, that makes it worse.
Ha-ha.
That means there's more pressure on.
The titular monster in Babadook is found in a pop-up book titled what?
The Babadook. Uh-oh. Mr. Don't wait, hold on. Let me think. My friend Babadook. Babadook
You're so
goes to
close,
market.
Doug.
You got parts of it.
Yeah, you got all the parts, just individually.
In different answers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you serious? The Babadook is my friend. Mr. Friend. Mr. My Babadook.
Boop, boop, boop.
Beep, beep. Here comes the Babadook.
Ooh, I'm sorry. The answer was, what is Mr. Babadook?
I didn't say that.
No.
I thought that was the first thing I said.
You said Mr. and then you went
you
off
said-
on a different
No,
tangent.
You said the Babadook, and then you said Mr. The Babadook is my
Oh my
friend.
God.
You're so close.
Oh.
I have one for you, Tease. You
Too
watched this
obvious.
movie recently.
Okay.
In Final Destination 2,
Ooh, I did just watch this.
how does death pursue the characters? The order it escaped it, or the reverse order they escaped it?
I like that question.
I'm pretty sure it's the same order they escaped in, just like the first one. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention.
Wrong.
Is it reverse order?
It was reverse order. They mixed it up for the
I clearly
sequel.
wasn't paying attention. I just watched that movie a few days ago. That's pretty shameful.
Oh, God. This is a movie we covered for the podcast that I don't think I actually know the answer for. What is the name of the villainous character Kathy Bates portrays in Misery?
Oh, I know this one.
Mrs. Meaty Woman. I don't know. I can't remember this whatsoever.
Who is Annie Wilkes, Alex?
Yep, there you go. Well,
I know my Stephen King.
These other three,
Let's do them.
Carrie, Theater of Blood, and Onibaba. At least two of those movies I hope we will cover sometime soon.
Onibaba would be fun to do.
Onibaba would be great, and so would Carrie.
Hell yeah.
I haven't seen Theater of Blood, so I can't really talk on that one.
Either.
But we'll save some of these other ones for
that'll
the
be
next
fun
episode.
to whip out every now and then. A little horror trivia at the end. Well, before we sign off, we got to get that money. So, Cleveland, who's our sponsor for this episode?
Meet Robert. He's not your average guy, and he sure as heck isn't in your average family. Down at 1444 West Remake Drive, you'll meet a whole new group of people to watch on this new network sitcom. Come on, grab a hot glass of water, grab your uncooked popcorn, and have a wonderful time with the Grudges. Meet the Grudges.
When you first started that, and I said, "Who is this episode sponsored by?" and you just said, "Meet Robert," and I thought that was gonna be that was the product.
Robertman, our sponsor. Yeah.
No, Meet Robert, as in MEAT, Robert. Yeah. Meet Robert. Which
I don't want to meet Robert. I do not.
This episode
Steak
also
face.
brought to you by Meet Robert.
We got two this week for the price of one.
All right.
I got that from earlier, Ben. You were talking about the movies, and I giggled because you said the other Grudges, and I just got this image in my head of like the Grudge sitcom. Meet the Grudges.
That would be. I would actually watch that. Yeah, that would be pretty funny.
You'll be killing to see the hijinks this family gets up to.
That would be so funny to see, like, just like a traditional family sitcom where they're going through all of their like samey like Americana family problems, but also killing people at the same time.
Yes,
that would be really funny.
Melinda.
All right, well, that'll bring us to the end of this week's episode. Check back with us next week to see what's lurking around on the bottom of the ocean. Is it a dud, or is it something that is
much
not,
worse?
That is not a
TJ Donkey Punch Miller.
He is at the bottom of the ocean, isn't he?
I don't know what that means.
Don't worry about it.
All right.
If you like the show and maybe you want to hear more about TJ Donkey Punch Miller, then
it doesn't sound good, whatever it is.
Then you can follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod. Oh yeah, and also go rate the show. That's usually how I start things. On Apple Podcasts or wherever else you get your podcasts. Smash those 5 stars. Leave us a nice review.
Smash them.
Smash them. Also on Twitter, like I just said, and on letterboxd.com/podpeoplepod for the list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those reviews. You can follow me on Twitter at Deep State Ozzy.
I'm at Mr. Sheets.
And I'm occasionally tweeting for at Lightarc Studio as we continue to work on our game, It Stares Back. Come and check us out. We're on Steam. It's pretty rad. Have a spooky strategy time.
And if you buy the game for a cool $6 American, then we won't have a grudge against you.
Nope.
And we will not haunt you for the rest of your days. All right, well, thanks for listening. We'll see you again next time. I feel cursed at this point, so I'm just gonna stop.